Today we're having a look at the new 2024 Lexus NX450h Plus F Sport. It's in this beautiful ultrasonic blue. I think it looks fantastic in the sunshine. You have 20-inch wheels, blacked out since this is the F Sport version. It also sits a little lower than the regular NX. Overall, the proportions of this car, I do think it's a good looking SUV. The styling, the graphics, there's a lot of styling going on since this is a Lexus. A lot of lines all over the car. So let's pop the hood and let's see what we have powering this 2024 Lexus NX450h Plus. This is the most powerful NX in production right now. So under the hood we do have a 2.5 liter inline 4 putting out 304 horsepower. You also have 3 electric motors, 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds. Fuel economy comes in at 33 city, 38 highway, which is not bad at all. Top speed 125 miles per hour, and the price for this is just under $60,000. Now I do like the layout that we have here because you can see there's not a lot of big plastic covers here. You can actually see what's going on under the hood, so well done on that part, Lexus. So starting with the front end design before we take this for a drive, as I said, I do like what Lexus is doing right now. It's a huge grille on the front end. These are also bigger on the F Sport. You have these functional air curtains on the side here. This plastic piece is bigger since this is the F Sport. Fog light down there, full LED, as you can see, with this Lexus L shape cutting in, and it feels like it's pushing the grille inwards here, looking nice. Looking at the side view proportions, as I said, I do think this is a beautiful looking SUV. We do have a splash of chrome, and I think this is the only chrome piece I can find on this entire car. You also have the camera down here for the 360 camera, which you're gonna have a look at in just a minute. 20-inch wheels. In this case, I'm usually not a fan of black wheels, but since we have everything else blacked out, the trim around the greenhouse and the front and the rear and so on, I do like the black wheels in this case, and also that it sits, as I said, a little bit lower than the normal NX. We have a very sharp line here cutting in, creating a part of the shoulder line. You can then see how it dips right here. I'm not sure if you can see it, how this line from the shoulder cuts up here, creating a lot of dynamic movements in this design. Coming around to the rear end, we have a full LED light bar. I think that suits Lexus overall. They've had it for a while now. We also have very thick and dynamic taillights here with this hockey stick design, and again the black graphics coming back in the rear end as well. We have some splash of silver in the lower section. So let's open this up before we have a look at the interior. Just quickly want to show you what the space looks like back here. It's really not a lot to talk about. Underneath here you do have all the charging pieces. If I can get this opened up, down there we have the charging cable. We also have this Sport NX carpet in here, some storage on the sides and some hookups as well. And if you want more space than this, you can obviously also fold the seats down. So let's jump in and have a look at this interior, because I think the interior is a highlight of this car. So look at this. We have a 14-inch infotainment screen, which is massive for this type of package. We have some nice doors as well with some styling features up here, different textures. They're all regular buttons for these mirrors and also the windows here, memory seat settings, and the electric door opening button right here. If this fails right here, you can also open it by pulling it 2 times this way. Let's jump in here and have a look at the details of this interior. It is a pretty special interior because the gauge cluster right here is only 7 inches big. You can see the side gauges here, for example the EV range here, and then you have the fuel gauge on the right side. These are all static, so they're not part of the actual display. The display itself starts here and ends in this point, creating just this 7-inch screen. I think it looks great. You can also switch up what it looks like if you change the drive modes right here. So you have Eco, Sport S, and then you have Sport S Plus. In addition to that, you also have a 10-inch head-up display right in front of you, which works fine. But this integration, I think this is a great integration of this big of a screen. Since this is a very dynamic design, it's very hard to integrate a big screen, 14-inch, same size that we have in the Toyota Tundra, for example, in a design like this. But we still have a nice housing for the gauge cluster up here, soft touch material all around on the top. And I really like how this plastic piece flows with the overall design of the car, looking nice. Thankfully, we do have 2 dials, and those are the 2 most important dials for the function here, because these control the temperature, and this is what I want to see. It's beautifully done with a small little display inside of this dial, looking great. You have the blue color on the left side, the red on the right side, so you know exactly what it is you're adjusting. You have heated and ventilated seats in 3 different levels. For this car, this being a $60,000 car, you also have the heated steering wheel in two levels. You can add some more climate settings here if you want to fill around with that. The fan speed, though, is not analog. You have that right here in the center. This is how you adjust the fan speed, and also where you want the air to come out from. You do that by tapping this little icon on the side. Other than that, it's a pretty standard infotainment screen. You have the map here. You can connect Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly if you want to do that. The music settings here, the source. You can check out all these settings here, Apple, Amazon, and so on. Go into the vehicle settings. You can see the energy flow, for example, putting it into drive. It's going to show you how the car is delivering its power. Now you can see that it looks like only the battery is engaged at the moment. Looking pretty cool. You can also check the all-wheel drive status here with this graphic. And what I love about this car is if we click this button down here, the camera button, you're gonna get the full 360 view. One thing I do wish here, though, is that the car itself is actually blue, but we're not gonna get that attention to detail from Lexus in this case. You can see that it is white on here, but it is a pretty decent 360 camera, as you can see. And putting it into reverse, you're gonna get the trajectory lines, so it's very easy to see where it is you're going, in addition to the 360 view that also has this X-ray view, so you can actually see what is underneath the car itself. Very cool feature in this price range. Putting it back into park, further down we do have 2 air vents here, pretty standard stuff. This is the dial for the drive modes, as we talked about, the Eco, the Sport S, and the Sport S Plus. And as I said, the gauge cluster is changing the graphics when you switch those up. I'm not a huge fan of this gloss plastic because, as you can see, it gets very dirty very quick. However, I do like this small little gear selector here, moving it to the left and down, putting it into drive, left and up, putting it into reverse. You also have these buttons here, so you have traction control on and off. These are the buttons for whether you want to engage the internal combustion engine. You just click this button here when you are driving, and it's going to fire up the internal combustion engine. You do have, as I said, about 40 miles of range, EV range for this car, and right now I'm sitting at about 15 miles left, and you can see the gauge right on the left side. You also have this auto button, so you can allow the car to choose whatever settings it wants to be in. And this is what the key looks like. Pretty standard looking key. You have the lock, unlock, and hold for opening the trunk, and also the panic button, and then the Lexus logo on the rear. And looking very dynamic. I do like this, that Lexus puts the styling into their keys as well. It looks like a pretty classy key. 2 cup holders here, and moving further back, you do have this armrest, which you can open up both this way, or if you want your passengers to just do their thing, they can open it this way as well. So you have 2 sort of different openings for this thing. I do think that's pretty convenient. It also is rather large for this type of package. Moving on to the seats here, you do have the F Sport up here. I do love when car companies does this for the trim level. They make something special with, for example, the seats and the trim in here. So we do have the F Sport embossed in the headrest. The seats themselves look very nice, and they feel super tight. They really hug you in the roads with this bolstering that we have going on here. Power adjustable, obviously, and overall pretty comfortable seats. Looking up top, we don't have a full sunroof here. We have this standard size, which is totally fine for me. I'm going to keep that open for the moment so we get some light in here, and you have a storage spot for your shades. Moving on to the steering wheel here, great looking steering wheel, very thick and sporty, and this is what you want to have in a car like this with the F Sport. However, this coming with a CVT gearbox, I still haven't figured out how to use these paddles. I might do, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but they just don't shift when I want them to shift. And I also don't understand how they work in combination with the CVT gearbox. So we're gonna have a look at that in a minute when we take this for a drive. On the right side here, you have the controls for the cruise control settings. You can also adjust what you want to these arrows to kind of have what sort of functions you want them to have by clicking this button down here, and you can see that it switches up what functions you want here. Same thing on the left side here, you can switch up what kind of functions you want these arrows to have by clicking this button, in addition to the volume buttons right here. F Sport here in the bottom, looking great. Again, attention to detail when you have a specific trim like this. I love when they put stuff like this on. 2 regular stocks, one for the wipers right on the right side, and the light settings here on the left. Overall, I think this is a beautiful looking interior. This is what I want to see. If we're gonna have a big screen like this, you need to have it integrated in the overall design of the car. And I think Lexus, with a 14-inch screen, that's not easy to do. They made a fantastic job with this beautiful integration of the screen, in addition to the physical dials for the temp control. So let's jump in to the back seat and let's see if I can fit behind my own driving position, being about 6'1", 6'2". I have it a little bit further back now because, as I said before, I am filming, so I like to have the seats a little bit further back. But I still have a decent legroom back here, and I think this is great because the styling of this is a very sporty design, and it's not easy to accommodate the rear passengers in the space back here when you have a sloping roofline like this and have it be a little bit more stylized than a boxier SUV. But I feel fine back here. If I were to just move this seat forward a couple of inches, I will be completely fine for a long road trip. Folding this down, you're gonna see that we do have 2 cup holders back here, and down here you do have 2 USB-C ports, in addition to a cigarette outlet right there. So with that said, let's jump back into the front seat and let's do what this F Sport was meant to do. Let's take this for a drive. The only thing that I'm a little bit confused about is, as I said, gonna be the CVT gearbox. It just doesn't feel like the CVT suits this car overall. I really don't understand why they put a CVT in this. I understand if you can have a CVT, for example, a Toyota Prius, that would make a little bit more sense, but having it in a larger luxury sporty SUV like this with the paddles, that really does not make a lot of sense to me. Going over this gravel parking lot here at Red Rocks, it's a pretty rough surface, but it's very, very comfortable still, even right now as I have it in the sportiest setting. But let's start off by putting it in Eco and full EV mode. What I like about this as well is I love these hybrid setups. When you drive the car, it charges the car as you go along, so you basically always have at least a little bit of EV range, which is fantastic. Also, of course, helps a lot with the fuel economy. I think overall Lexus has just really stepped it up when it comes to their designs. I made a full review of this car on the Sketch Monkey channel. I also made a redesign there. I think Lexus is about to switch up their design identity, because if you look at their new, specifically the electric concept that they have a bit of a smoother design language. Specifically, if you look at the BEV Sport concept, which is sort of the new Lexus LFA. It looks great, fully electric hypercar from Lexus. I do think that is going to dictate, that styling of that car is going to dictate what the next generations of Lexus is going to look like. A little bit smoother, but still with a very clear identity. And I also think they're going to keep their arrow or L-shaped front daytime run lights for the identity of the brand. As you can see, this gauge cluster, 7 inches, it doesn't really feel like that. It feels like a 12.3 inch, to be honest, because I feel like these gauges on the side are still part of the digital part of the gauge clusters, but they're not. It's just a small little 7-inch screen. Still looks great and it works fantastic, and I much rather have this type of layout than just have a big, ugly, boring, huge widescreen up on the dash. This looks so much more classy, and also it's a lot more fun for the interior designers to design something like this when they can actually sketch the lines by hand and figure out, you know, the problem that they must have had you know, integrating this 14-inch screen in this interior. They did, again, a fantastic job with this interior. All right, so we're coming out to this fun, curvy mountain road right here. So let's pop it into, let's fire up the internal combustion engine. And let's get the full 304 horsepower. And let's see what this can do. So this is what I'm talking about. The CVT gearbox, it just keeps revving and revving and revving. And if I put it in, I do believe I have to have it in S. I'm not entirely sure, but now I'm in S3. Or it just shows, it's so funny because it just shows a number there. But if I just slow it down here, you can sort of hear gear changes, I guess. But as I keep shifting up, you can't hear anything that resembles anything that an upshift. It's such a weird configuration to have the paddles in combination with a CVT gearbox because, you know, it's a continuous variable transmission. It doesn't have separated or individual gears. So let's go down to 4 here. Let's floor it. Keep shifting up to 6, but nothing really happens. It's a very interesting solution for this F-Sport NX, which again, having a sporty car like this, everything is so good about this car except for the gearbox, which I'm not a huge fan of. I do wish we did have an 8-speed or something like that for this car. It would be such a better driving experience. But the build quality, Lexus, there are 2 brands that has a specific build quality to them that feels different when you step into the car, and that is one Lexus, very tight. Everything feels like they just put the nuts and bolts in this car. They just screwed it in a little bit tighter than other manufacturers. It's Lexus and Mercedes. They both feel extremely solid in their build quality. And so does this NX. And it's actually, if you disregard the CVT gearbox, it's still a pretty fun car to drive. The brakes feel great. They have a very easy to adjust the brake pressure and how much braking you need without it having to, you know, gripping very aggressively or something like that. It's very smooth transition, and it feels like it's a little bit spongy, but I do like that in this type of vehicle because after all, it's more of a luxury vehicle than a sport vehicle. And the handling as well. It's a small SUV and it sits pretty high up the ground, but I'm glad that they lowered the F-Sport a little bit more, lower than they do with the normal NX. I do think that definitely helps with the handling and these 20-inch wheels as well. I'm not usually a fan of head-up displays, but in this case, I do think it's not intruding too much because usually it's just too much stuff going on there. And of course you can adjust what information you want up on the screen, so you can just have the basics such as the speed, and that's pretty much all I need for the head-up display anyway. And you can also see if I want to adjust something on the steering wheel, it pops up bright and very high contrast on the head-up display, looking super cool and very easy to follow along what it is you want to adjust by just looking at the head-up display. Overall, what is my final verdict for this car? I think it's a fantastic car, both in the styling and I wouldn't call it fantastic in the driving experience. And that all has to do with this CVT gearbox, which we've already talked a lot about. But the styling looks great, specifically if you choose it with this ultrasonic blue, with the black F-Sport accents and details, graphics on the exterior. Black wheels actually think looks good on this car. For $60,000 though, you do have a lot of competition. And personally, as I said on my main channel as well, there is one SUV that I would probably pick over this that is also a little bit more powerful, and that is the XC60 Recharge, because I do like the Scandinavian simplicity in its styling more. It also has a great interior, and it does have a little bit more power. But if you're into Japanese cars, the Lexus NX450h Plus is a fantastic car, but you gotta get it with the F Sport because that does so much to the appearance and the drivability of this car.